give us the first hearing on which one here? Legislature? Okay.
Let me turn the mic on. So the ones I gave to you are consecutively paginated. I started with the legislature because that's your budget. I also have the directors behind me who are available for any questions. I typically give an overview in the same format that you normally see it, list any adjustments that have been identified by the various legislative agencies. But if you have specific questions about details, I will defer to the directors behind me because at least one of them is my boss. So moving into the legislature's budget on page 6. We have the same information for the legislature as we have for anyone else. So you have 10-year summary of expenditures. You have detail on the breakdown of different categories of expenditure, particularly on page 6 into page 7. But if you want to turn to page 8, we'll do the actual FY 2026 analysis. So there was $34.5 million approved for the FY 2026 budget for the legislature. There's $3.2 million in SGF that reappropriated, carried over from one fiscal year to the next. If you look at item 3 in the table, that's KLS modernization. That $2.6 million is the ARPA funds, which were allocated for modernization. The way we structured that is just budgeted the full amount of expenditures in each year until it's gone. Of course, that will have the same requirements for being fully expended at the end of September as any other ARPA funds. There's $500,000 of SGF added for the voting board. There's $400,000 SGF for the Amazon Web Services conversion and mainframe retirement. That was a KLOIS project to make that conversion. There is $400,000 added for legislative compensation. That is legislators' compensation. That's the 4.4% salary adjustment that you saw at the beginning of this session. There's $200,000 added for session staff pay adjustments. That totals about 5.5%. That's your committee assistants, office assistants, stuff like that. There's $100,000 added for a K-12 funding simulator. There's $127,380 added for a Chief Information Technology Officer and $105,600 added for a Chief Information Security Officer. The funding for both those positions is a half year. So that is not a full year of funding, that's a half year of funding for those positions. There's $90,000 in for the Worldwide Tech contract. The Worldwide Tech contract is our screens and the WebEx service. Up until now, that's been paid by ARPA funds, but those are all exhausted for that purpose. And so this is the beginning of the ongoing costs for that. There's $400,000 SGF added for a redistricting special session. And so that was assuming the cost for travel plus a 2-day special session and everything involved in there. And then $2.3 million is backed out as all other adjustments. So when you do the subtotal of other changes, it zeroes out. So you can see that these various other changes are being funded as part of out of those reappropriations that you see above. If you don't have any questions for 26, I'll move to 27 as an overview.
Yes, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see that 2.3, I understand that math, but I don't understand 184 FTE.
Okay, certainly, I understand. So when the legislature adopted the new compensation plan, okay, you were converted from what was considered to be a temporary employee, okay, just during session, to annualized compensated. And so that is legislators, both in the House and Senate, being added to the legislative budget. There was a global motion to delete all added FTEs, but since you were all pre-existing FTEs, I thought that would not be what you wanted. So. I will note, and I'll cover it in detail at the end, that the $3.2 million reappropriation was deleted as part of the global motions. A lot of these costs that are located under other changes are funded from that reappropriation, and so it'll probably make it challenging for the legislature to fit within its existing budget if there is no some restoration of that reappropriation.
Donald, I do have a question. The House Voting Board, what's the situation with that?
My understanding is it's been fully, they wanted to update it, new LED lighting. There was some lighting issues and stuff like that, and they replaced it, built a new one. But Tom, I'm sure, would be more than willing to speak to it if you have questions.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, Tom Dade, Legislative Services. The House Voting Board was requested by the House Speaker, as well as the chief clerk of the House to upgrade, as Dylan alluded to, upgrade the software and some hardware facilities in the voting board, as well as all of the members' voting stations at their desks. All of those where you push the button to vote, where you push the button to talk, all of those were replaced as well as all of the wiring from those voting stations at their desks to the main board, which sits behind or above the House Speaker's office.
Okay, so that work has been done already, you say, or some of it? Or no?
It's already been spent. It's already been done.
Okay.
It was done over the interim, and it took about 12 weeks total for all the pulling of wiring, as well as the company to come in and redo all the software and hardware.
Okay, thank you for that update. Committee, any other questions? Otherwise, we'll move on to 27. Okay.
All right, well, if you go ahead and turn to page 11. So a lot of the things I'm going to talk about now, you will have already seen because we're going back to the previously approved for 2026 budget. So the $34.5 million with no reappropriations being reflected as our starting point. So you have $400,000 added for the Amazon Web Services conversion and mainframe retirement. You have $200,000 added for session staff pay adjustments. There's $50,000 added for the K-12 funding simulator, which was formerly $100,000. So this is ongoing costs for that K-12 funding simulator. You have $255,000 for the CETO and $211,200 in for the CISO. That is a full year of compensation for both those positions. I do believe that I received notification last night that the CETO position has been retained and that there is a new Chief Information Technology Officer. There's a deletion of $149,000 for Amazon Web Services disaster recovery. We formerly retained a different private disaster recovery firm. And so with the conversion to Amazon Web Services, they take over those responsibilities. So we back that out. The same thing is true of the Cisco Smart contract. That's an existing contract we had under our current IT infrastructure that is unnecessary under the revised infrastructure. And there's a deletion of $67,000 for the Indica Smart Search. It was a data cataloging system that was used mostly by the research department and some other agencies, but they indicated that they could go without that contract. There's $339,108 in for a 10% legislative staff salary adjustment. This was a motion made during the Legislative Coordinating Council meeting and now included as part of the agency requests. This is just the portion of it that is in the legislature's budget. So you'll see this same motion appear in the other legislative budgets. There's $400,000 in for legislative compensation. That's the 4.4%. And there's $2.2 million in for all other adjustments. That's unallocated spending that is related to a future legislative compensation adjustment or any other adjustments that you should deem necessary. With that, I would stand for questions on the legislature's budget.
Committee, any questions? Yes, Senator Klemp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So when I look at on the other changes, you talk about if I come down to line on the analysis, the budget request on line 10, it talks about legislative staff salary adjustments. And then when I go to section 10 on the next page, it talks about legislative pay plan. Are those the same things? Or it seems like definitions are off, or I'm off.
So there's a couple different things that are going in here. You have legislative compensation, which is compensation for legislators that is operating by the legislative order coming from the Compensation Commission. And that's going to appear in both FY26 and FY27. You have
Line 11 on the spreadsheet?
Let me have a look at it. Yeah, we're talking about 26 or 27?
27, page 11.
So the legislative compensation there is the 4.4%. So that's legislators.
I'm just seeing the 400,000.
Yep, I understand. And the legislative staff salary adjustment is in line 10, and that's the 10%. And the session staff pay adjustments, your OAs and CAs, that's in line 3.
Line 10 is 10%?
Line 10 is the 10%.
Yeah, very good. And that does bring up just a quick question on 2026. It was not 10% for the increase for staff. It was something different, right?
No, sir. Our understanding of the motion that was made in the Legislative Coordinating Council is that was for FY 2027 only, since the majority of FY 2026 is elapsed at this point.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, sir.
Committee, any other questions? Dylan, just for a moment, going back to the 400,000 for the redistricting. So that's still included in 26. So to take that out, because we're not using that now.
Certainly. I mean, that was included as part of the budget in order to have a redistricting special session. If you wanted to delete that, that would be the will of the committee.
Okay, all right. Well, committee, if there's no other questions, we can just do this collective. We can get a motion for the 2026, and I would bring a recommendation to take that 400,000 out if somebody wants to make a motion on that.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move that we remove the 400,000 that is in the budget in terms of the special, that was allotted to the special session.
Okay. So there's a motion, second. Okay, all in favor on that? Yep. Okay. All right, and then do we need to make another motion now to accept it currently to 2026? And
Certainly, you know, I would just note there are a couple of issues that newsletters are going out. We expect to get up 2 of those. Turn the mic on. There's going to be some additional costs there, and I didn't know if you wanted to revisit the issue of SGF reappropriations or not. I mean, it's just completely your choice.
yes.
I'm sorry, can you
Senator.
elaborate on that, the 2 newsletter?
So, you know, Tom can provide some additional details, but my understanding is just due to the timing issues of when those franking fees and everything are going out, we're going to end up with 2 sets of those costs going out in the same fiscal year. Also, a lot of the costs under other changes are being funded from SGF reappropriations, which of course, you know, you have additional time to address that issue, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't give you a heads up about it.
Okay, Senator Klemp, did you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wouldn't mind having Tom talk to the why we're having 2 in a single session. It's probably very obvious, but it'd be nice to get that update. And then I had one further question. In regards to I think you had 4.4% for staff increases in 26. Are you saying there's no opportunity to bump that to 10%? My understanding is we're losing a lot of folks to Overland Park and other areas on staff. So just curious.
Certainly, I appreciate that. The 4.4% is legislator compensation. So that is your compensation. It does not impact your staff. And so in FY 2026, there's the 5.5% for OAs and CAs, okay, which was negotiated and contract signed with them. The 4.4% is based upon an average from BLS data, based upon the average KPI, like Kansas Personal Income Indexes, and then that travels by the order, and we certify the order with the assistance of the revisor's office for how much that adjustment is going to be. All right, so that 4.4% only affects you and other senators and representatives.
I'm only concerned about the staff at this point in the conversation. So thank you for the education on where those fall. And I didn't know if there was an opportunity to discuss if the window of 2026 would be open for helping staff to remain competitive here in the Capitol.
If you'd like me to do an estimate of how much it would take to do a 10% salary adjustment for staff in FY 2026, I can do that. You just have to think about when the bill will become law, okay? Which is going to, April, May, somewhere in that time frame, which means there'll be just a couple of months left. And so what I'll do is I'll work with the directors behind me, and we will come up with an estimate for what it would cost to do just a couple of months of a salary adjustment at 10%. Yeah, I could do that estimate for you if you like, sir.
That would be fine. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, and did you still have a question for Tom?
The question for Tom was the two different, in two different newsletters and why it's falling in the same cycle. It's probably obvious, but would you expand on that?
On the newsletters?
Yeah, well, we have two that are going to fall in the same cycle on the, and
Right.
so what happened to drive that?
Because of and a lot of this will only affect House members, but it could affect some Senate members. We have, in fact, it'll affect 2 Senate members, I believe, if I recall. Because of the timing in a fiscal year, last year's session ended on April 11th or 10th, whatever the date was. So many of the newsletters were not done until after July 1, the start of the new fiscal year. In fact, I would say probably 65% of the newsletters that legislators sent out to their constituents were not done until after July 1 through December 14th. So that's in fiscal year 26. Now, it's an election year for the House next year, plus 2 Senate members. And all of those newsletters have to be done by May 31, according to new LCC policy. The old LCC policy was it had to be done by sine die, which makes that this year, April 10th, I believe. And so in order for legislators to have plenty of time, especially those up for election, the LCC extended that time frame to May 31 for a permanent basis, not just in an election year, just on a permanent basis, that it will no longer be sine die as when those newsletters have to be done and in the mail to their constituents. So that's going to add, and with the new legislator amounts, each representative receives $6,000 a calendar year, and each senator receives has the option for $18,000 a year. So that we're talking $1.6 million total for both House and Senate in one calendar year. But because of the timing this year, that could be $1.6 million in the fiscal year. Potentially.
Okay.
Sorry.
Committee. Yeah, Tom,
Chair.
go ahead.
Would that reduce next year's then?
Not necessarily. No, it might. It would reduce FY27,
Right.
possibly back down to about the individual 1.6 million, because it's 750,000 for House and 720,000 for Senate. So it could reduce it back down to that, but we don't know what the 27 session is going to look like as far as, is it going to be a strict 90 calendar days again, which in 27, you won't have that deadline of May 31 because it's not an election year for either side, either chamber.
Okay, committee, with that, can we get a motion on 2026 and well, let's do with 2026 first. I think that'd be better. Yeah, conversation.
I move we move forward with the 2026 budget summary as discussed.
Got it? 27?
We move forward with the 2027 budget summary as discussed as well.
Okay,
Okay, and I wouldn't normally do this, except for I'm in a weird spot as both the person who puts these budgets together for you and also your nonpartisan analyst who does this. But with this position, as incorporated with the State Budget Committee recommendation, that means the CETO position has not been funded, which I believe was just retained. The reappropriations were not restored, and the 10% salary adjustment was not incorporated, all of which is fine. I just wanted you to be aware that is where I understand the budget to be at this point. Is that correct?
So we just need to add that back in?
You would need to add it back in because the State Budget Committee deleted those items. And you'll see that at the end, it has the shorthand adjustments on the back. But each one of those items was deleted. The reappropriations were deleted, the CETO and the CISO positions were deleted, and the 10% salary adjustments were deleted. And so what I described in here is the agency request. And so you would have to restore those if you wanted to restore them.
Okay, and that would be from that global motion that took them out.
That is correct. That is the global motion that deleted reappropriation, deleted added FTEs, and deleted salary adjustments.
We just need,
Mr. Chair,
yes, go ahead.
is there simple language that I can use to add that back in?
You can just tell me if you want to do the 10% salary adjustment, say yes. Like if you do want to, like I would like to add the 10% salary adjustments for legislative compensation, and I'll take care of the legwork. If you would like to restore the full reappropriations, I would note that the full amount of the reappropriations is $4.2 million, but legislative agencies lapsed over $1 million of that voluntarily. So you would simply restore the legislatively requested lapses and then provide funding for the CETO and CISO's positions. I think there's clearly going to be a CETO position at this point. I think it is still unclear, in my opinion, and I would defer to Tom on whether the CISO position will be retained at some point.
Thank you. Yes, Senator.
Do you know when that Cisco position would be?
Yeah, I do not know, and I believe there is still internal debate about that CISO position, whereas the CETO position, the chief, that I believe an offer has been made and maybe acceptance has happened, according to the email I got last night.
And if we were to assume, that's a big word, I know, assume that that position would not be filled until 27 budget.
You would just add it for the 27. You would make the adjustment only for 27, not for 26.
Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
I would like to, onto his motion, and add in the CETO position for 26 and the, we'll do just the CETO position for 26. Not the other one. Is that correct? Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
In addition to the staff increases, adding those back in like we discussed.
10% salary adjustment, got it. And is there a desire to take any action on reappropriations, or are you going to leave that for now? There is, if you turn to page 8, there is the lapse of $3.2 million from, so it's basically reducing the $35 million budget from the, reaching to 34.5 from the 37.6, which was used to fund the appropriations to the legislature. Like I said, I mean, you can just leave it alone if you want and wait to see what the House does. I don't know, whatever the will of the body is.
Go ahead, Senator Clem.
Thank you. We would look to add the reappropriations back in.
All right. And if I could ask one more question regarding the legislature's budget. So there's a motion to restore the CETO position for 26. Do you desire to fund that for 27 as well?
That is correct.
Okay. And do you desire to fund the CISO position for 27 at this point?
I'll table that. I don't know.
Got it.
Senator.
I think my intention was to fund that for 27, not for 26. That one position, CETO. Yeah.
You'll take it out of 26 and fund it for 27, okay.
You need a motion for that?
So my understanding, so if I could clarify, Senator Alley, would you like, are we talking about the CETO position or the CISO position? CISO.
CISCO, right? Or SO.
Security officer, you want to fund that for 27?
7, right, because it's not funded for 26 under our previous, yes.
Is it the will of the committee to do that?
It is not, it's not my, okay, it's not funded today.
That is correct. Under the SBC recommendation, neither one of these positions are funded because they were deleted, okay, by the State Budget Committee as added FTE. If I could repeat the motion as I understand it, where you currently stand. So you're proposing to fund the Chief Information Technology Officer for 26 and 27. Of course, 26 is half funded because it's only half a year. You're proposing to fund the 10% salary adjustments for legislative agencies, particularly the one in the legislature's budget at this point, but for FY27. You're adding back the reappropriation dollars for FY26. You're deleting the $400,000 in FY26 for a special session, and you're funding the Chief Information Security Officer, okay, for FY27, is my understanding. All right.
Okay, committee, based on that, we have the first, we got a second on that? Second, okay.
If, at the pleasure of the committee, if I could go to the Office of the Revisor of Statutes first, if we're done with the legislature's budget. And that starts on page 42. These, I promise, are much simpler. So in FY26, there was $5.2 million approved. There was $326,775 that was reappropriated. The Office of the Revisor of Statutes recommends lapsing that full amount. So they are requesting $5.2 million in FY 2026. Looking at 27 on page 43. Starting from the $5.2 million approved, there's a legislative pay plan of the 10%, which is $405,363. And they have other adjustments, just adjusting some fringe benefit elections that deletes $5,930. And if I understand the will of the committee correctly, was it your intention with your 10% motion to restore the 10% for all legislative agencies, including the legislature, or would you like to do it on an agency-by-agency basis?
Mr. Chair.
Let's go ahead.
Agency by agency.
All right. So that's the Office of the Revisor of Statutes. Gordon is here, as well as Joe Walters, to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, committee, any questions?
First of all, could you, I've got Legislative Coordinating Council on page 23. Am I in the right one?
So I think I may have spoken less than clearly. So page 42 and 43.
42. Okay, thank you.
I know I kind of jumped to the end, but there's some time issues that I'm trying to respect over here. And so as you can see, there's just not a lot of detail, there's not a lot of information. And they're pretty much just, it's overwhelmingly salaries and wages in the Office of the Revisor of Statutes. They have some printing costs that come in every couple of years for printing some statute books. But honestly, the big changes you see in here are group health insurance, fringe benefit costs, and any salary adjustments that are approved by the legislature.
Okay, so do we, Donald, need to make a whole new motion on this one since we're doing it agency to agency?
I believe so, sir. So, okay. I mean, there's no need for, well, there's a reappropriations issue, but honestly, there's no need to take any action on that because the Office of the Revisor of Statutes fully lapsed their reappropriation already. So there's no actions needed there. And then there's just the question of the 10% salary adjustment.
Okay. Committee, any questions? Otherwise, we'll take a motion.
So I move, I motion to approve the budget with the 10% salary adjustment built in.
And I understand that to be in the 10% salary adjustment, approving the budget for both FY26 and 27 as amended.
That is correct.
Got it.
Okay, got a second on that? Second, Senator Alley. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Looking on page 18, I know I'm jumping all over here. This is the Legislative Research Department budget. So there's $5.7 million was the approved budget. There's $265,000 that reappropriated. The agency is recommending that $150,000 of that reappropriation be lapsed. You can look in line 4 and line 5. Line 4 is redistricting license fees. Unlike the redistricting costs that are inside of the legislature's budget, which were contingent upon us having a special session, these ones had to already be paid. It's for the computers and the software in order to be able to determine that. There's also $80,000 in here for State House Annex remodeling. We formerly had physical storage space for archives and physical files. Those have been digitized at this point, and so these are costs associated with that being converted into usable space. The negative $140,000 just shows that we're doing these two things within the existing resources of the KLRD budget. With that, I would stand for questions on 26 or move to 27.
Can we just go ahead and deal with 26? I got a question. Oh, go ahead, Senator.
Chairman, I move that we accept the 26 legislative research budget as presented.
And would that continue then to add back in the 140,000, which the redistricting license, the annex remodeling, because that was spent, correct?
So I understand that motion to be the Legislative Research Department budget as requested by the agency, which means that would restore the reappropriation, but with $150,000 lapse, so $112,000 or so, $117,000. But also, there's no need to add the $140,000 in because that's just allowing you to see what changes have been made from existing resources. We're using that from our existing budget. It's just on here so you can see it, see what's going on.
And we don't,
And if you'd like to move on to FY27, unless there's any questions on 26.
Senator Clem.
Do we have the 10% discussion?
That'll be in 27.
27,
Yeah.
thank you.
So looking on page 20. So you start with a $5.7 million appropriation for 26 as it was former. There's a negative $140,000 adjustment off that baseline because that's the redistricting cost and the annex fee remodeling costs are one-time costs. So we're going to back those out of the budget. There's $472,231 added. That is the legislative 10%. That's a 10% pay plan. And there's $32,000 in all other adjustments. In all other adjustments, I'm looking at group health insurance and other inflationary adjustments and fringe benefit costs. Mostly is what you're seeing here. It's almost all in salaries and wages.
Okay, committee, any questions on the 27? Okay, Senator
I
Alley.
make a motion, we accept the 2027 budget request as presented.
So that would include putting that 10% back in there.
If it's the budget request, it would include the 10%. I will note that the legislative agencies back here did not request in their original submissions a 10% salary adjustment. That was the will of the Legislative Coordinating Council separately.
Yeah, it says that there in number 2. Okay, all right, do we have a second on that? Senator Clem, any more discussion? Okay, everybody good with that? All right.
All right, turning to page 27, the LCC budget. And I do believe that Tom will would like a moment to address you on the LCC budget. Just to remind you, the LCC budget is sort of the operating hand of the legislature. So they, get people paid, pay the bills, stuff like that. So there's a $982,463 was the original approved without reappropriations. $1.1 million was reappropriated. The agency is recommending the lapse of $494,536. There's $123,000 added for leave payment assessments. And you see I backed that back out again, once again, just showing that's being paid out of one-time costs. And I would turn to 27 unless you have questions there.
Go ahead, Senator Clem.
Chair. So the reappropriation, instead of you're backing out 494,000 out of the reappropriation. So there's approximately 600,000 in being left in.
That is correct. And that's not the operating cost of the LCC for the most part. What you're seeing there, and if you can see some details of that on item 2 below in the text, that's largely the CRM, Constituent Relationship Management System. And the reduction is related to the fact that I believe they're renegotiating that contract in order to reduce based upon utilization rates. And I believe that conversation has gone on at the LCC quite a bit.
To summarize that, CRM, it's already approved, but we're able to save some money on the cost of that, so it's coming down.
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay, yes, Senator Hulscher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a question in terms of the LCC. Was it during COVID, did the budget get larger along with more responsibilities in that time frame?
So there was a couple different things that happened during that period of time. One, there was discussions, the legislative pay plan began to go into implementation. So that has had a substantial effect on the state budget, on the legislative budget as a whole. Not on the LCC budget, that's kind of outside of the scope of this particular thing, but I can answer this question. There's the CRM systems that have gone on. There's some, the KLIS modernization was funded by a combination of ARPA funds and a little bit of and some SGF as well. So that's driving costs. The Amazon Web Services conversion and the mainframe retirement, those costs are going down. The Microsoft 365 conversion, okay, so there's license costs are associated with that. And I don't want to get too deep in the weeds for this committee, but there's still an outstanding issue of hardware replacement for laptops that's still, but we don't have an estimate for that yet, so it's not included as part of this budget. But that's really what's driving that is CRM, some other hardware costs, mainframe retirement, legislative pay. That's what's driving your legislature's budget.
Any other questions on that? Okay, Dowling, go ahead.
All right, turning to 27 on page 29 for LCC. There's $982,463 as the starting point. That leave payment assessment is backed out as a one-time cost, $120,000. There's $500,000 added for the CRM system, $75,137 added in for legislative pay, and $41,084 and all other adjustments, which are group health insurance and other fringe benefits. I do believe there's a contract that's under consideration as well for this committee that Tom could address if you were so desirous.
Okay, questions? Senator Clem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The CRM cost, is that an ongoing cost of yearly at 500,000?
That is what is budgeted. You may see an adjustment. I think those conversations are still ongoing, but that's kind of a placeholder inside of the budget as contract negotiations are ongoing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Committee, any other questions? Okay, then we'll go ahead and entertain a motion on that. 26 and 27.
Chairman, I make motion that we accept the Legislative Coordinating Council budget as requested for 26 and 27.
Can I get a second? Second by Senator Hulscher. Any other conversation, questions? We good? All right. All right. Everybody approved that? Oh, sorry. I wasn't looking up there. Tom, sorry about that.
Just before you start voting,
Okay.
I just want to bring to your attention for FY26. The Legislative Coordinating Council has approved 2 different contracts worth $100,000 total. The Legislative Coordinating Council has agreed to a professional services contract with a law firm to file an amicus brief at the Kansas Supreme Court. That was for $50,000. And also they have agreed to a legislative consultant for a higher education budget consultant, and that also is $50,000. So that's an additional $100,000 that'll be paid in FY26, this current year, that is not on the list that is there. And all of that has happened since December 12th and January 8th with the Legislative Coordinating Council meetings.
Thank you for that. So do we need to just update that in here in the motion or what, to add that in for 26?
So my understanding of the motion as it currently stands is you're adopting the agency requested budget, which lapses $464,000. One option to do that is simply reduce the size of that lapse, is reduce that down to $364,000. At that point, you will have funded the cost of those two contracts.
Okay, yes, Clem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on the first one that you mentioned, the legislative briefing, is that, can you repeat this, the first?
That's with a law firm, Garrett Graves, Garrett and Grime. It is a legislative professional services. It's the LCC contracted with them to file an amicus brief at the Kansas Supreme Court, and that's approximately what they will be paid by the end of the year once everything is done with their review of the amicus brief. And
So just for my own edification, why would that not run through like the AG or his department or something of that nature? Why would that go through the LCC? Wouldn't the LCC make a request for that through, I was just curious on the process.
I'm going to guess this may take a legal interpretation by Ms. Walters back there, but it is because the Attorney General's office and the Governor's office are the two parties involved. The Legislative Coordinating Council didn't feel they could go to the Attorney General's office to file the amicus brief.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we need a motion to adjust to 364,000 instead of 464,000.
Yeah, if you can just hold just 1 second, let me get Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there won't be any further cost in 27?
No, sir.
Right, for right now?
I can't answer that. I really don't know. And I don't know how much more involvement the law firm will have. They have filed the amicus brief. They're still reviewing other briefs that have come into the Supreme Court. And I'm just the payer of this contract. I don't know much more than that on this.
The second part of that 100,000 for the higher education person, does that contract go into 27?
No, it is a 5-month contract, paid $10,000 a month.
Okay.
And so that should end in May.
So that will take care of that.
Or 1st of June, whatever it is, but definitely before the end of the FY26 fiscal year.
So we did have a lapse of 460-some thousand. So to solve this problem, we would just say we only approve a lapse of 300 and whatever that number is.
394,536.
I would make that motion with that adjustment for 26.
Okay, you second that. All right, Senator Clem, any other discussion on that? Okay, then.
And just if I could repeat real briefly, and I know our time is short, but that means you'll lapse 394,536, restore reappropriation, lapse 394,536, approve the 10% salary adjustment for FY 2027. All right. And everything else is just as the agency requested. Right?
Yeah, so we had a motion second. All in favor on that? Good? All right.
Okay.
Okay, Dylan.
The last agency before you today will appear on page 35. And this is the Legislative Division of Post Audit. So the approved budget was $3.7 million, $370,238 reappropriated, $332,419 was lapsed at the agency request. There are no supplemental requests and no other changes in their budget. With that, I'll move to 27 unless you have questions.
Committee, any questions? 26.
So starting from an amount of $3.7 million, There are no enhancement requests. The agency change plan, there was a 10% salary adjustment that was recommended by the LCC. That's $336,103. All other adjustments total $30,689, which is, that reflects their current elections for employer contributions for fringe benefit and costs. With that, I would stand for questions for FY 2027, and Chris Clark, the director, is available as well.
Dylan, the 30,689, all other adjustments. Why did that get deleted?
So that is part of the agency's request, and when they ran their calculations for group health insurance and fringe benefit costs and everything like that, it came up a little bit negative. A lot of this stuff is dependent upon employee elections. So if you hire an employee who has a family, that's more expensive to the business than it would be if they're single. And so what happens, get deep in the weeds, but basically we have a module that calculates the costs. And so a lot of this is individual elections that drive it.
Okay, and I just brought that up because the other agency, they kept it in, and okay, thank you.
It all depends, agency by agency. We do the calculations and we spit out the numbers, and that's the starting point.
Okay, committee, any other questions? No? Okay, well, can we get a motion on this 2627? Senator Alley.
Chairman, I move the Legislation Division of Post-Audit budgets for 26 and 27 as presented.
Okay, second. Senator Klemp, any other discussion? Good?
And just to verify, 100%?
Yes.
That means that is as requested, which means that the lapses as requested by the agency, as well as a 10% salary adjustment for the legislative post-audit, correct? Thank you very much.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Okay, with that, committee, thank you. Thank you for being patient with me as I'm learning and navigating. Thank you, Dylan, for all your wisdom in this. And we will be having the governor's office, we'll be reviewing that sometime next week. I don't know when yet, but
Okay.
thank you. With that,
If anybody has any follow-up questions on the legislature's budget or long-term trends and spending for this branch, give me a call.
we're adjourned.